Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Biographical Encyclopedia, Volume 1, and this article is entitled Pratt, Parley Parker. So Parley P. Pratt is fairly well known, actually. I was debating whether or not I wanted to use this article because there are so many other ones on him, but I decided to use this one because it seemed to be one of the longer ones on him, and therefore I'm hoping it's a little bit more thorough than some of the other ones. So him being a fairly well-known person, why is he so well-known? Well, he wrote his own autobiography, yeah? I mean, the autobiography of Parley P. Pratt, where he mostly talks about his missionary work, which was quite remarkable. He did do a lot of missionary work. But, I mean, we just finished talking about, like a couple of times ago, about David W. Patten, for example, who also did a great deal of missionary work. And I imagine that he could have written a book very similar to that. But it is cool that he did get to write that book, and that's why he is so very, very well known. I think most of us also have an image in our mind of like the little short skit that was made by the church several years ago with the man who plays Parley P. Pratt. He didn't look anything like Parley P. Pratt, so I'm just letting you know the real Parley P. Pratt didn't really look like that at all. He wasn't a kind of a thin man. He was kind of stocky, in fact, if anything. Yeah, so it's very funny to me that they chose that casting choice. It's interesting. I mean, he was a very excellent actor who portrayed Parley P. Pratt. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he didn't look like Parley at all, so I just thought that was funny. But, yeah, so I'm excited to talk about him today for a couple of reasons. So Parley Pratt, like most people know about him, is all about his missionary work. Very, very few people know about his death. And what's interesting is that the church kind of covered it up at the time. It wasn't a full secret, it was in the newspapers, but it was never mentioned at conference. Contrast that with Orson Pratt, whose entire funeral was during conference, and like they just had the whole congregation attend the funeral of Orson Pratt. But Parley was basically ignored. They didn't even mention that he died at the time. And I was a little frustrated by that until I finally decided, I think, that there was one or two things that he did right at the end that was a little bit on the shady side of legal. Was it completely legal? Maybe it was. It was a gray area. Yeah. And I think that's why they covered it up. But Parley P. Pratt was murdered. Straight up, we know who did it. Like, it's a known fact. He was murdered. So, we will get to that. A little bit of foretasting for the later. Maybe this will keep my engagement up. But I just thought that was interesting that very few people know that about him. Like they say, like David W. Patten was murdered and Joseph Smith. But that was like a group of people doing it. Also, David W. Patten died in the middle of a pitched battle. I don't know if you would call that a murder. I personally wouldn't. Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith were killed. I mean, they were murdered in a sense, but they were murdered by so many people together that you couldn't pinpoint one person who was the murderer. Yeah? But in this case, we know who did it. We know how they did it. We know why they did it. And, I don't even think that he was convicted of that murder. Anyways, but we will take a look at that at the end, later. So, I don't know if they're going to mention it in this article, but I will say that's foretaste for later. And I will also give my own opinion on his actions and whether or not we feel that it was legal. I do have my own opinion on that. So, let's take a look. Pratt, Parley Parker, a member of the Council of 12 Apostles from 1835 to 1857, was born April 12, 1807 in Burlington, Otsego County, New York. He was the third son of Jared and Charity Pratt. Jared was the son of Obadiah and Jemima Pratt. Oh gosh, they're going into his ancestry, aren't they? I hate that. It's so annoying. Because at the end of the day, who cares? Like, unless he was descended from somebody really famous, I don't think this is necessary. Alright. Obadiah was the son of Christopher and Sarah Pratt. Christopher was the son of William and Hannah Pratt. William was the son of Joseph Pratt. Joseph was the son of Lieutenant William and Elizabeth Pratt, who were found among the first settlers of Hartford, Connecticut in the year 1639. Okay, that is mildly interesting, but they didn't have to give the entire list of ancestors. They are supposed to have accompanied the Reverend Thomas Hooker and his congregation, about 100 in number, from Newtown, now called Cambridge, Massachusetts, through a dense wilderness, inhabited only by savages and wild beasts, and became the first founders of the colony of Hartford in June 1636. Zippity-doo-dah. I don't care. Plus the fact that they're already using some very racial language here. Ugh. Okay. This ancient oh gosh. Okay. I'm going to try and get through this quickly, alright? As ancient pilgrim, William Pratt was a member of the legislature for some 25 or 30 sessions, and the general court gave him 100 acres of land in Saybrook, Connecticut, for service performed as lieutenant in the Pequot War. He was one of the judges of the first court in New London County. Parley P. Pratt was a lineal descendant of the 7th generation from that distinguished pilgrim and humble pioneer of the New World. Okay, I think we got through the ancestry. The youthful days of Parley P. Pratt were characterized by the soberness and thoughtfulness of manhood. Though from adverse circumstances, his education was extremely limited, yet he displayed, even in youth, an originality of mind seldom exhibited. In September 1820, is that 20 or 30? I think it might be 30, yeah. He, being led by the Spirit of the Lord from his home in the state of Ohio, came several hundred miles eastward, where he fortunately obtained a copy of one of the most remarkable works of modern times, the Book of Mormon. He read the same, was convinced of its divine authenticity, and traveled in search of the highly favored men of God who had seen angels and heard the voice of the Almighty. So this is the well-known story. I mean, there are more details here from the film created by the church, by the man who did not look like him. He didn't want to do anything else. He didn't want to eat. He didn't want to sleep. He just wanted to read. As soon as he had the Book of Mormon in his hands and started reading it, and he had borrowed it, and but then he had to give it back before he was finished, and so he went in search of the people who created the book so that he could get a copy for himself. Yeah, he was that convinced by the Book of Mormon. Like, it was very powerful. And that's why people use this as an example of the power of the Book of Mormon in conversion. And it absolutely does. It has amazing power because of the strong testimony you feel from it when you read it. He read the same, was convinced of its divine authenticity, and traveled in search of the highly favored men of God who had seen angels and heard the voice of the Almighty. He soon succeeded in finding some of them, from whom he learned about 5 months previous, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had been organized. He requested baptism and was immediately after ordained an elder. Yeah, he was immediately converted, and I believe he was even preaching at the time. So it's really fascinating how he went from preacher to member of the church, like basically overnight. The same month, he visited Canaan, Columbia County, New York, the county where he had spent many of his youthful days, and after preaching a few times in different neighborhoods and baptizing Orson Pratt, his brother, he returned to Seneca County, receiving a revelation through Joseph the prophet. He, in company with 3 or 4 others, performed a mission, some 1,500 miles to the western boundaries of the state of Missouri, and was among the first of the saints to stand upon that choice land where the city of Zion is hereafter to be built, preparatory to the second advent of our Savior. Yeah, he was well known he was very, very active in the church in Missouri. So that's all over the history books. In the spring of 1831, he returned to the northern part of Ohio, where he met Joseph the prophet, by whom he was ordained a high priest, June 6, 1831. In the summer, he again performed a mission through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri, preaching, baptizing, and building up the church. In the autumn of 1833, he and about 1,200 men, women, and children were driven by a murderous, furious mob from their own houses and lands in Jackson County, Missouri. 200 houses were burned, cattle shot, haystacks and grain burned, many whipped until their bowels gushed out. Jeez, that's very graphic. others killed, and the afflicted remnant driven across the river into Clay County. Soon after this, Elder Pratt performed a long journey of about 1,500 miles east, preaching repentance and strengthening the saints. In 1834, he again returned to Clay County, Missouri, officiating in his holy calling wherever he went. Having returned to the northern part of Ohio, he was chosen and ordained one of the 12 apostles of this last dispensation, February 21st, 1835, by Joseph Smith. The same year, he performed a lengthy missionary journey through Pennsylvania, New York, and several of the New England states, and returned again to Ohio. In 1836, he visited Canada and established a large branch of the church in Toronto and other branches in adjoining towns. He's well known for this. He basically helped John Taylor to convert. Yeah, very fascinating. In 1837, he visited New York City, where he founded a large branch of the church. In 1838, he removed to Caldwell County near the western boundaries of Missouri, and in the same year, another dreadful persecution commenced among the saints, and they were again driven from their own houses and inheritances and their property to the amount of millions was destroyed. Some scores of defenseless men, women, and children were murdered, scores of others incarcerated in dungeons, among whom was Parley P. Pratt. The balance, about 15,000, were exterminated from the state and found refuge in Illinois. I don't like that wording. Exterminated from the state. No, they were driven from the state. Yeah, they had to leave. Okay, I'm kind of skimming over this a little bit because we have discussed the events of Missouri. People know about this. This is well known. We don't need to go into strong detail here. Just know that Parley P. Pratt was in the middle of it all. He was in the middle of it. Elder Pratt was kept in prison without trial about 8 months, when, by the kind providence of God, he made his escape on July 4th, 1839. Independence Day, right? Cool. Immediately after gaining his liberty, he published a history of the Missouri persecutions written while in prison. The first edition appeared in Detroit in 1839. In company with others of the 12, he went to England in 1840, and in the city of Manchester commenced the publication of a periodical entitled The Millennial Star, which has continued until the present time, the current volume being the 63rd. In 1841, he was appointed the president over all the British conferences, and he remained in this high and honorable station until the autumn of 1842, during which he edited the Millennial Star, superintended the Saints' emigration, and published several small but interesting works. The following winter, he returned to Illinois, where he continued laboring in the ministry for 1 or 2 years. About the beginning of the year 1845, he was appointed president over all the branches in New England and the Middle States. Geez, that's a big job. His headquarters being at New York City, where he published a periodical entitled The Prophet. In the summer, he returned to Nauvoo. In February 1846, he was again driven from his home by a ruthless mob. Again? Geez. Some 15 or 20,000 saints were also driven from the United States about the same time, with the loss of houses and lands, and an immense amount of property, which the mob are in the unmolested possession of until the present day. In 1901 is when this was written. After wading through unparalleled sufferings with his family, he and the persecuted saints succeeded in reaching the Indian country at Council Bluffs and being called by the Holy Ghost through the prophet Brigham Young to go to England. Again, he left his family upon the broad prairies without house or scarcely any food to comply with the word of the Lord. Well, geez, that's a lot. He's dealing with a lot of issues, yeah? He arrived in England, assisting in setting the church in order and in strengthening the saints throughout the British Isles. In the spring of 1847, he returned to his family and brethren, and in the summer and autumn of that year, he removed to Great Salt Lake Valley and suffered incredible hardships until the harvest of 1848. Yeah, they were basically starving, because remember, they didn't have any food stored for the winter, and they didn't have anywhere to grow it. So, yeah, they were suffering, and I mean suffering. Jeez. He assisted in forming a constitution for the provisional government of Deseret and was elected a member of the Senate in the General Assembly, and was afterwards elected to the Legislative Council when Utah became a territory of the United States. In 1851, he was sent on a mission to the Pacific Islands and to South America. Oh, I did not remember that. In the summer of 1855, he returned over the Sierra Nevada mountains to his home and occupied a part of the time in preaching in the various settlements of Utah, and at other times laboring with his own hands in the cultivation of his farm. The following winter, he officiated as chaplain in the Legislative Council at the State House in Fillmore City. In the autumn of 1856, he accompanied about 20 missionaries across the plains to the States. During the winter and part of the following spring, he visited the saints at St. Louis, Philadelphia, New York, and other places, preaching, writing, and publishing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God. And finally, on the 13th of May, 1857, he fell a noble martyr for the cause of truth, which he had advocated with such untiring perseverance for nearly 27 years. He was assassinated near the boundary line between Arkansas and Indian Territory while on a mission to the States. Now this is slightly misleading. His body was buried near the place where he was killed. Among the numerous writings of this martyred apostle may be mentioned first The Voice of Warning, printed in New York in 1838, and which has since passed through many editions and then translated into several foreign languages. Second, his History of Missouri Persecutions. Third, his poems, his Key to Theology, a masterly production. The history of his life up to near the time of his martyrdom was written by himself and was published in the year 1874 by his son, the late Parley P. Pratt. Parley P. Pratt Jr., To this work, the autobiography of Parley Parker Pratt, the reader is referred for a full history of the life of this great and illustrious apostle. I'm not loving the way that they portray his murder. They didn't explain why he was murdered. I wouldn't say he was assassinated, because assassinated implies that he was killed because he was an apostle. Yeah, that's not true. That's not true at all. That wasn't the reason. The motive was not political, and therefore it wasn't an assassination. You see what I mean? Like, for example, if, any leader of, let's say Macron from France. Like, I'm just picking a leader of a country that's not Donald Trump. Okay, so let's just say Macron, was killed today by the jealous lover of his wife. Yeah? I have no idea if they I'm just making this up. But, like, if he was killed in that way because of that, then he wasn't assassinated, even if he is the president of a country. You see what I mean? So, he was murdered, but he wasn't assassinated. I disagree with that language. And, we'll get into it. It's an interesting story. But calling him a martyr, would I call him a martyr? See, the thing is, he wasn't killed for the church's sake. So, I wouldn't call him a martyr either, just because he wasn't killed for the church's sake. I feel like a martyr implies that the reason for your death is church-related. Here, it wasn't directly church-related, let's put it that way. All right, well, let's get into it, yeah? Let's take a look at the Wikipedia article. I'm pretty sure he's the only Parley P. Pratt in the world. Oh, well, except for his junior son, who's also named Parley P. Pratt, I guess. All right. Yeah, in fact, this article even says Parley P. Pratt Sr. Now, I feel like it's kind of necessary to go through all of this. So let's, it's a little bit long, but I think we'll get through it okay. Yeah? I feel like Parley P. Pratt is one of those people you'd forgive for rambling on and on about, yeah? So, Parley P. Pratt, everyone. Parley Parker Pratt Sr., April 12, 1807 to May 13, 1857. He was 50 at the time of his death. Was an early leader of the Latter-day Saint movement, whose writings became a significant early 19th century exposition of the Latter-day Saint faith. Named in 1835 as one of the first members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, Parker, I don't know where that came from. Pratt was part of the Quorum's successful mission to Great Britain from 1839 to 1841. Pratt has been called the Apostle Paul of Mormonism for his promotion of distinctive Mormon doctrines. I kind of disagree with that, though. I mean, there were so many, major missionaries. I'm not sure I would call him the Paul. I don't know. I don't know. All right. Pratt explored and surveyed Parley's Canyon in Salt Lake City, Utah, named in his honor, and subsequently built and maintained the first road for public transportation in the canyon. Okay. Pratt practiced plural marriage. He was murdered. Okay, they're already jumping to the end. Here we go. He was murdered in 1857 by the estranged husband of his 12th wife. Yeah. Pratt fathered 30 children. His living descendants in 2011 were estimated to number 30 to 50,000. Oh my gosh. I had no idea he had that many descendants. That's crazy. He is the great-great-grandfather of Mitt Romney, the 2012 Republican candidate for President of the United States, and John Huntsman Jr., diplomat and former governor of Utah, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Russia from 2017 to 2019. Mitt Romney. So, wouldn't that also make him related to Emerson Ballard? I believe they were related, were they not? And also to Marion G. Romney? I mean, I don't know if he was or not. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. It's possible that he was related through a different branch, and so he wasn't related to everyone related to them, So, well, I'm pretty sure they're related. Let's see. Let's find out. All right. Early life and education. But yeah, he was killed by the jealous husband, ex-husband. Well, technically they were still married. And that's why it was borderline. The death thing. Let's just go over that really quickly, what I know about it, and we will read what, if there's any more details here, which there probably are. So I understand that I guess it was his 12th wife, I didn't know the exact number, had come to him with children, and he married her in order to support her. Yeah, support her financially and to help her out because she was in kind of dire straits. And it turned out she had fled from her husband in Arkansas. And so the fact that he married her while she was still technically married, that is the borderline illegal thing that he did. The reason I say borderline is because it was the Wild West, wasn't it? Wasn't it? 1857? Yeah. In Indian Territory? Yeah, that was literally the Wild West. Were there laws that extended over state borders? Sort of? Kind of? Yeah, there were a few, and usually they're honored by the other, but if somebody leaves their husband and takes their children with them, is that not an indication that they have every intention of not being married to this other person anymore? Yes? And so that's the borderline illegal thing. Because Parley P. Pratt married her before the legalities of her marriage, her first marriage, were straightened out. And then when he was going through that area as a missionary, then this ex-husband, or husband I guess technically, caught up to him and was angry with him because he had married his wife and shot him, and he bled out. That's why he died. Today he probably would have lived through it, and it's really sad to me that it ended up the way it did. Was it a little bit shady? Borderline, yeah. But the other man solidly should have gone to prison for it. I'm just saying. You don't kill people for no reason anyways. Even if you're jealous. Yeah? If you think somebody did something illegal, then they should be prosecuted, but you should not kill them for it. Yes? That's what I'm saying. Alright. Early life and education. Pratt was born in Burlington, New York to Jared Pratt and his wife Charity Dickinson, a descendant of Anne Hutchinson. Okay, see, now that's interesting. Descendant of Anne Hutchinson. That's she's well known, yes? She was a Puritan, was she not? I believe she was a fairly well-known Puritan of her age. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. He married Thankful Halsey, which I always thought was a funny name. Thankful. Yes, this is my wife, Thankful. Yeah. I am very thankful for my wife, Thankful. I don't know, it's weird. In Canaan, New York on September 9th, 1827. The young couple migrated west, where they settled near Cleveland, Ohio, where Pratt purchased land and constructed a home. In Ohio, Pratt became a member of the Reformed Baptist Society, also called Disciples of Christ, influenced by the preaching of Sidney Rigdon. Pratt soon left his property to take up the ministry as a profession. Yeah? Latter-day Saint service. During his youth, Pratt had difficulty accepting prevailing Christian doctrines being taught by various churches. In early 1830, while seeking religious truth through prayer and study, Pratt declared that the prophecies of the holy prophets were open to my view, and he sensed a strong prompting to preach what he had learned. See, this is the famous story of him, yeah? In August 1830, Pratt and his wife Thankful left their farm near Cleveland, Ohio, and headed east toward their childhood home in Canaan, New York. Along their journey on the Erie Canal between Buffalo and Albany, New York, Parley told his wife that he felt compelled to disembark at Newark, New York, and told her to continue on to Albany. It is in Newark that Pratt met a Baptist deacon who spoke of the Book of Mormon and lent Pratt his copy of the book. Convinced of its authenticity, Pratt traveled a short distance to Palmyra and spoke to Hiram Smith. Pratt was baptized in Seneca Lake by Oliver Cowdery on or about September 1st, 1830, formally joining the church. He was also ordained to the office of an elder. Continuing on to his family home, he introduced his younger brother, Orson Pratt, to Mormonism and baptized him on September 19th, 1830. We will get to him very relatively soon, in fact. I think in a couple weeks. 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Arriving in Fayette, New York in October 1830, Pratt met Joseph Smith and was asked to join a missionary group assigned to preach to the Native American tribes on the Missouri frontier. During the trip west, he and his companions stopped to visit Sidney Rigdon. They were instrumental in converting Rigdon and approximately 130 members of his congregation within 3 weeks. I didn't realize that was his mission that did that. Okay, that makes sense, though. I mean, because he used to be that part of that group. And he's like, Jude, guess what I found out? And he tells him all about the Book of Mormon. Yeah? Pratt became close friend with the Smiths, particularly Joseph, with whom he would later experience persecution and imprisonment, including incarceration in Liberty Jail. Yeah, he was at Liberty, but he was not at Carthage. Yeah. In early 1833, Pratt served as a missionary in Illinois. He went to Jackson County, Missouri, where through the summer he headed the School of the Elders, a gathering of about 60 men who studied religious and secular subjects similar to the School of the Prophets in Kirtland, Ohio. I like that. He tried to set it up kind of in Missouri as well. In the fall of 1833, he served as president of the Mormon Branch No. 8 in Jackson County and as a leader of the Mormon militia. He was among those Latter-day Saints driven into Clay County, Missouri by mob violence. Yeah, it's on record. In February 1834, Pratt and Lyman White headed back to Kirtland to report on the events in Missouri to Joseph Smith. From Kirtland, Pratt traveled with Smith in Pennsylvania and western New York, preaching and trying to recruit people to serve in Zion's camp. Okay, after traveling together for 3 weeks during some of this time with Pratt serving as Smith's scribe, Smith returned to Kirtland from Geneseo, I don't know how to say that, New York, for a court case. Pratt continued his missionary efforts along with Henry Brown. Pratt and Brown went to eastern New York to give his family members money to move to Kirtland. They went to Richland, New York, where Pratt convinced Wilford Woodruff, who had been baptized 3 months earlier, to join Zion's camp. Okay. Cool. Interesting, because, I mean, history could have gone differently if it hadn't been for him. Interesting. I can see why they call him the Paul, but in some ways, I can see it. Pratt returned to Missouri later in 1834 as a member of Zion's camp. After Zion's camp broke up, Pratt rejoined his wife Thankful, who had remained in Clay County while he had been traveling. While working as a day laborer, Pratt served on the Missouri High Council. Thankful had run up large debts in Pratt's absence, and when he returned with her to Ohio, some felt he was trying to flee his creditors and criticized him for it. Pratt settled in New Portage, Ohio, now part of Barberton, where he was the leader of a group of Latter-day Saints there. Okay, so they had some money issues. I don't know any of those details, so I'm not going to comment on that any more than they already have. More missionary service. In 1835, after his call as an apostle, Pratt served with other apostles in a mission to New York, New England, and eastern Canada. Pratt preached in Upper Canada in and around Toronto in 1836. In 1837 and 38, he preached in New York City. Pratt later served as a missionary in the southern United States and in England, the Pacific Islands, and South America. He moved to Chile to begin missionary work in Valparaiso. In 1852, Pratt and his family left Chile after the death of their child Omner, without having had much success among the country's Catholic residents. Yeah, that's not a huge surprise. I don't know when the church took off in Chile, but it wasn't then, yeah. In addition to having converted his brother Orson and preacher Sidney Rigdon, Parley introduced the Mormon faith to several future leaders of the church, including Frederick G. Williams, John Taylor and his wife, Leonora, and his wife Leonora, okay. Isaac Morley and Joseph Fielding, along with his sisters Mary and Mercy. Yeah, they were were they all from Canada? I know John Taylor and the Fieldings were. I'm not sure about the others. All right, Apostle. In 1835, Pratt entered the leadership of the early Latter-day Saint movement when he was selected as one of the original quorum of the 12 Apostles. While on a mission to the British Isles in 1839, Pratt edited the newly created periodical Millennial Star, while presiding over the church's branches and interest in New England and the mid-Atlantic states. Pratt published a periodical entitled The Prophet from his headquarters in New York City. And we mentioned both of those in the article. Missouri War. After serving as a missionary in New York City, Pratt returned to church headquarters in Missouri in 1838. He was arrested in November 1838 along with Joseph Smith and was held in prison in Richmond and then Columbia until escaping on July 4, 1839. His writings during this and other imprisonments with Smith comprised many first accounts and stories preserved about Smith. Okay. Writer. Pratt was a noted religious writer and poet. Many of Pratt's writings are the only credible or lasting accounts from important American and Mormon events such as the Haun's Mill Massacre and the events and conditions of imprisonment with Smith at Liberty Jail. I didn't realize he was the one who wrote about those things. I mean, Joseph Smith wrote a little bit about Liberty Jail, but I guess there's not that many details. Pratt's first printed work was The Mormons, So-Called, a 5,500-word account of the persecution of Mormons in Jackson County in 1833. Yeah, they mentioned that, yeah? Pratt wrote an autobiography, published after his death, but likely his most widely read work in the 21st century. Yeah, I agree. He published a book of poetry in 1835, the first collection of poems by a Latter-day Saint. Some of his poems have become staple Latter-day Saint hymns, some of which are included in the current hymnal of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Ooh, I'm going to have to look those up. Pratt wrote many of these hymns in 1839 while sailing to England to serve as a missionary. He was involved in compiling a hymnal with 40 hymns of his own work while editor of the Millennial Star. In 1835, Pratt published a pamphlet about his missionary efforts in Mentor, Ohio. This work, entitled A Short Account of a Shameful Outrage, was the first pamphlet ever published by a Mormon. Okay, cool. One of Pratt's most influential works was a book entitled A Voice of Warning, which I have heard of, but I have not read. 1837, first published in New York City. Givens and Grow say the book was a work that served the church as its most powerful proselytizing tool after the Book of Mormon for more than a century. Interesting. Pratt made substantial revisions between the first and second editions after Joseph Smith voiced some reservations about it. Okay. Yeah, correct a little of his doctrine, yeah. The second edition of A Voice of Warning was published in 1839. In 1837, Pratt, along with John Goodson, published the second edition of the Book of Mormon. It included Pratt's testimony, along with that of 3 and 8 witnesses to the golden plates. Okay, so the witnesses' testimony was not originally in the first edition. That makes sense. Near the end of 1837, Pratt published Mormonism Unveiled, Zion's Watchman Unmasked. I've also heard of that, which is the earliest surviving response by a Mormon to an anti-Mormon writer. Okay, so it's a response to the original Mormonism Unveiled, because that does ring a bell. Pratt also wrote one of the earliest Mormon works of fiction. His A Dialogue Between Joseph Smith and the Devil was published on January 1st, 1844 in the New York Herald. It was a religious treatise in fictional form. I like it. Pratt's most well-known theological work was A Key to Science of Theology, which was published in 1855. Other works by Pratt include Late Persecutions, Millennium, and Other Poems, at least 10 tracts published while he served as editor of the Millennial Star, and Proclamation to the People of the Coasts and Islands of the Pacific, written by Pratt in the summer of 1851 in San Francisco, California, and published by W.C. Wandell in Sydney, Australia. Pratt's visions and poetry also serve as the text for many songs now found in the Latter-day Saint hymnal. Pratt's writings also corroborate many events and revelations which were found in a book of Latter-day Saint scripture known as the Doctrine and Covenants. In total, Pratt is known to have written 31 published works, not including his posthumous autobiography. Interesting. Journey to Utah. After the death of Joseph Smith, Pratt and his family were among the Latter-day Saints who emigrated to what would become Utah Territory. They continued as members of LDS Church under the direction of Brigham Young. Pratt helped establish the refugee settlements and fields at both Garden Grove and Mount Pisgah, Iowa. He personally led a pioneer company along the Mormon Trail to the Salt Lake Valley. Life in Utah. In 1849, Pratt was appointed one of the justices of the anticipated state of Deseret. Yeah, they immediately applied for statehood, and then it was rejected by the U.S. government. He later served in the legislature of the Provisional State of Deseret, beginning in 1849. During the same time, as one of the 7 members of the Quorum of the 12 in Utah, he was among those who oversaw the division of Salt Lake City into wards, and the organization of other wards in Utah. Sometime in the mid-1850s, working with George D. Watt, Pratt helped develop the Deseret alphabet. Oh, it was phonetic alphabet, wasn't it? In 1854, Pratt went to San Francisco, California to preside over the LDS Church's Pacific Mission. The phonetic alphabet is not a bad idea in itself. Publishing whole, books written in it is silly, in my opinion. It's not universally accepted. Most people aren't going to be able to read it. Yeah, it's just silly. After the organization of Utah Territory, Pratt served intermittently in the territorial legislature. In 1852, he was elected to the Territorial Council in a special election. He was re-elected in 1853, but only attended the 1853-54 session and did not return for the second year of his term. For the 1855-56 session, although not a member of the council, he did serve as its chaplain. In 1856, he was again elected to a seat on the council, but resigned before the session to leave on a mission. Death and legacy. Here we go. In 1856, Pratt went on a mission to the eastern United States. At that time, troubles were brewing in Pratt's life. Hector McLean was the estranged husband of one of Pratt's plural wives, Eleanor McLean. Pratt had met Eleanor in San Francisco, where he presided over a church mission. In San Francisco, Eleanor had joined the LDS Church and had also had her oldest sons baptized. Hector rejected Mormonism and opposed his wife's membership in the church. Though they did not divorce, the dispute led to the collapse of their marriage. Fearing that Eleanor would abscond to Utah Territory with their children, Hector sent his sons and daughters to New Orleans, Louisiana, to live with their maternal grandparents. Eleanor followed the children to New Orleans, where she lived with them for 3 months at her parents' house. Eventually, she and the children left for Utah Territory via Texas. They arrived in Salt Lake City on September 11, 1855. She worked in Pratt's home as a school teacher. Yeah, because he had a lot of kids, remember? On November 14, 1855, she and Pratt underwent a celestial marriage sealing ceremony in the endowment house. She was the 12th woman to be sealed to Pratt. For religious and cultural reasons, Eleanor considered herself unmarried at the time of her sealing to Pratt, but she had not legally divorced from Hector, see? While Pratt was serving a mission in the eastern states, Eleanor went to New Orleans to get her children. Eleanor then took the children from her parents and headed to Texas. This was the same time that Pratt was serving as a missionary in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Because Eleanor took the children, Hector blamed Pratt. Yeah, was it his fault? Was it not his fault? I don't know. Maybe it was. Hector pressed criminal charges, accusing Pratt of assisting in the kidnapping of his children. Now that, I think, is okay. Go ahead, press charges if you think it's warranted, yeah? I don't have a problem with that. The courts should hopefully bear him out, but, maybe he did aid and abet. I don't know, I wasn't there. Yeah, Pratt managed to evade him and the legal charges, but was finally arrested in Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, in May 1857. Pratt and Eleanor McLean were charged with theft of the clothing of McLean's children. Is that ridiculous? That's ridiculous. The laws of that time did not recognize the kidnapping of children by a parent as a crime. Tried before Judge John B. Ogden, Pratt was acquitted because of a lack of evidence and Ogden's own feelings after interviewing Eleanor. Ogden sympathized with Eleanor and Pratt because he was so disgusted by Hector's drinking and wife-beating. Lovely guy, yeah? Lovely guy. Also considering that he murdered somebody, I mean, come on. Shortly after being secretly released, on May 13, 1857, Pratt was shot and stabbed by Hector on a farm northeast of Van Buren, Arkansas. He died 2.5 hours later from loss of blood. Told you, he bled out. Ugh, it's awful. It's just awful. As Pratt was bleeding to death, a farmer asked what he had done to provoke the attack. Pratt said, "He accused me of taking his wife and children. I did not do it. They were oppressed, and I did for them what I would do for the oppressed anywhere." Pratt was buried near Alma, Arkansas, despite his desire to be buried in Utah Territory. All right, I'm going to finish reading this section, and then I will express my own opinion on this subject. Some writers have viewed Pratt's death as an act of a jealous husband deeply angered by a man who had run off with his wife. A 2008 Provo Daily Herald newspaper article characterized McLean as a man who had hunted down Pratt in retribution for ruining his marriage. A 2008 Deseret News article described McLean as a man who had pursued Pratt across Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, angry that his estranged wife Eleanor had become Pratt's 12th wife. I don't know if I would say either one of those things. Did he really pursue him? Like, I didn't hear that that was what happened. But like I said, it wasn't there, so I don't know. Many Mormons viewed Pratt's death as a martyrdom. His dying words were said to be, "I am dying a martyr to the faith." Well, even though you said that, doesn't make it true. I'm just saying. A 2007 article in the Deseret Morning News said that Pratt was killed near Van Buren, Arkansas, in May 1857 by a small Arkansas band antagonistic toward his teachings. Okay, that's just straight up incorrect. Yeah. The historian Will Bagley reports that McLean and two friends tracked Pratt after he was released by Van Buren's magistrate. Brigham Young compared Pratt's death to those of Joseph and Hiram Smith. I think that's going a bit far, yeah? Other Mormons blamed the death on the state of Arkansas or its people. Due to Pratt's personal popularity and his position in the Quorum of the 12, the murder was a significant blow to the Latter-day Saint community in the Rocky Mountains. Pratt's violent death may also have played a part in events leading up to the Mountain Meadows massacre a few months later. After the massacre, some Mormons circulated rumors that one or more members of the party had murdered Pratt, poisoned creek water that subsequently sickened Paiute children, and allowed their cattle to graze on private property. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's not funny, but like what I find funny is the order that they mention these things in. It's like they murdered Parley P. Pratt, which of course they didn't, because we know who did it. Yeah, they poisoned creek water. Well, I don't know if they did that. If they did, it was probably an accident. And they did something else bad. They let their cattle graze on my land. Are you serious? Are you serious? Did you know that grass grows back? Did you know that? I'm just asking. Sheesh. That's ridiculous. Pratt was one of the better-known Mormons among other Americans. For instance, in his 1864 published visit to the Mormons, Fitzhugh Ludlow in The Atlantic made a joke about Mrs. Deacon Pratt and referred to Parley's Canyon, named after the celebrated elder Parley Pratt. Okay. In 2008, Pratt's family received permission from an Arkansas judge to rebury his remains in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Oh, but no human remains were found at what was believed to be his gravesite. No further search efforts for Pratt's burial site have been planned. Oh, that's kind of sad, because he explicitly said he wanted to be buried in Salt Lake. Oh, I'm sad about that. I didn't know that. They couldn't find him. There's lots of reasons why that could have happened, but that's sad to me. I know that he wanted to be buried in Salt Lake, and he just never got that opportunity. That's really sad to me. That makes me sadder than his actual death. Okay. Alright, I'm sorry. It's because I've known about his death for a while. Alright. So, that's the end of that section. We will continue in a moment, but first I want to say my opinion. Okay? Clearly, his wife had left her abusive husband. She left her abusive husband and had fled basically with her children. Like, is that wrong? I don't think that by itself is wrong. Yeah? I believe, and I'm fairly certain, that in order to get a legal divorce at the time, she had to have her husband's consent. And from what it sounds like, her husband would never have consented to her leaving him. I think that he would have made it really difficult for her. And so she just left. And she took her children with her as far as was possible. It sounds like it wasn't always possible. Like, sometimes they were with their grandparents in New Orleans. But, like, I don't think that she did anything wrong in that sense. I understand why she didn't get a legal divorce. I think legalities were just too difficult at the time. But, like, that she fled an abusive relationship is clearly an abusive relationship. And then, like, okay, the ex-husband bringing Parley Pratt up on charges, sure, go ahead. If you think that's justified, sure, do it. But the judge clearly sided with the wife and Parley P. Pratt. And because that happened, like, Hector dude, got really upset and angry and went out and killed him. I don't know that anybody saw that coming. I think that they didn't think he would go that far, but that's what he did. And as far as I'm aware, I don't know if he was ever prosecuted for that. I'll see if I can find that out. But, yeah, like, they know exactly who did it. They know how he did it. They know when he did it. They know why he did it. Like, they know all the details. It's, like, we know who killed him. But, like, so for me, like, because Parley married her before she was legally divorced, that's what was in the gray area. And I call that a gray area, not fully, like, illegal black area, because she had left her husband. She had been away from her husband for several years at that point. 1855, I believe they said. And they got married in, like, 1857. So, like, I don't see that as being wrong in and of itself. I understand why she did it. Because there was just no other legal recourse that she had. So, I personally I will not be criticizing either one of them for what they did. I think it's relatively okay. But that it would lead to his murder, I don't think anybody really saw coming. I don't think anybody thought that he would go that far. So, the murderer would. So personally, I am more than ready to forgive his legal gray area. As far as, like, good or bad things that you would do with your life. This seems pretty mild. Like, he was literally trying to help somebody. And he even said that she was oppressed. And I will always fight for the oppressed. And I love that about him. Yeah? I think he was a great person. So, alright. Let's keep going. Family. And there's an extra main article of the Pratt family because he has so many descendants. Okay. Pratt practiced plural marriage and had 12 wives, 30 children, and 266 grandchildren. It's amazing how quickly they multiply. Jeez, that makes, like, each one of his children had an average of, like, 9 kids. Like, that's such a large family. Gosh. Like, I'm a little flabbergasted because, I mean, he wasn't the one with the most kids. I believe Brigham Young had 56 kids or something like that. But I don't think he had 266 grandchildren. Like, that's a lot. Like, you're very, very fruitful multiplying children, yes. In 2011, Pratt's living descendants were estimated to number 30 to 50,000. His first wife, Thankful Halsey Pratt, died following childbirth in March 1837. She only had one child, I'm fairly certain. Thankful was a widow 10 years older than Pratt when she married him. Oh, I didn't know she was a widow. Huh. Pratt did, however, marry women averaging 10 years younger than himself, the greatest age difference occurring with his marriage to Anne Agatha Walker, who was 18 to his 40 years. Okay. That wasn't that unusual at the time. I don't think that that's weird. Okay. I mean, for the time, I mean. On May 14th, 1837, Matt married his second wife, Mary Ann Frost Stearns, a widow with a daughter. The marriage was performed by Frederick G. Williams. Mary Ann was a native of Bethel, Maine, part of Massachusetts until 1820, whose first relative to join the church was Patty Bartlett Sessions, later a prominent midwife in Utah. Okay. I'm not sure why that was interesting, but okay. Mary Ann was baptized by David W. Patton. She had come to Kirtland as a widow in 1836. So his first couple wives were widows, yeah? That's interesting. Joseph Smith later condemned the Latter-day Saints for marrying in 5 or 6 weeks, or even in 2 or 3 months after the death of their companion. Huh. Joseph Smith said that? Really? Where's the source on that one? Givens and Grow, 2011. Okay, I'm not familiar with the book, so I'm just going to say, there you go. I don't know about that one, so I'll just move on. But that's really strange to me. Pratt may have married Mary Ann so quickly to get back his infant son, although he remained in the care of Mary Ann Young for nearly a year after Pratt remarried. Okay. Mary Ann and Pratt at times demonstrated a deep companionship in their marriage, at times, most fully shown by her joining her husband in prison in Missouri. Okay. After Pratt began practicing polygamy, they became estranged. Okay. Pratt suggested his falling out with Mary Ann was stung by falsehoods which are circulated in the church. Okay, maybe. Some sources state that in 1843, Mary Ann Pratt married Joseph Smith, the church's founder. This marriage, however, does not appear on most lists of Smith's marriages and so is unsubstantiated. Okay, that's a maybe. Olive would marry Smith's successor, Brigham Young, after Smith's death in 1844. Who the heck is Olive? They didn't mention an Olive. Okay, I'll keep going. Maybe there's somebody else. Okay. Pratt made several attempts to get Mary Ann to join him in traveling west in 1846 and 1847, but after spending the winter of 1846-47 in an abandoned Nauvoo, she chose to return to Maine. Okay. Pratt provided her with clothes and money upon her return to Maine. Well, that was kind of him. Yeah, he didn't really have to, because it sounds like she left him. She received some of the proceeds from the sale of Pratt's home to a Roman Catholic priest. The Nauvoo home is still used as a residence for Catholic priests. Interesting. In 1852, Mary Ann traveled to Utah Territory, but she and Pratt did not see eye to eye on how to raise their children. Mary Ann received a divorce decree issued by Brigham Young in 1853. Okay, that's fair. Fair. Mary Ann then settled in what is now Pleasant Grove, Utah. She worked as a midwife, remained in the LDS Church, and became a leading advocate for LDS women against the attacks of those opposed to plural marriage. Okay. Honestly, Mary Ann Pratt sounds interesting. I would read a book on her life. Jeez. Okay. In the fall of 1853, Pratt had 7 living wives. These wives were Elizabeth Brotherton. When she lived, and then the date she married Pratt. 1 adopted child. Mary Wood, 1898, married September 4th, 1844. 4 children, including Helaman Pratt. Okay. I'm not sure why they mention Helaman Pratt explicitly, but okay. And then Hannah Het Snively, 1812 to 1898, November 2nd, 1844, 3 children. Belinda Martin, 1820 to 1894, November 20th, 1844, 5 children. Sarah Houston, 1822 to 1886, October 15th, 1844, 4 children. Okay, so he married 5 women in 1844? That's a lot. Phoebe Elizabeth Soper, 1823 to 1887, married February 8th, 1846, 3 children. And Agatha Walker, 1829 to 1908, married 1828, 1847, 5 children. Okay, so he married lots of women, one after the other. Agatha ran a millinery business in Salt Lake City. Other wives of Pratt. Martha Monks, 1825, married Pratt, April 28, 1847. 1 child died shortly after birth. After this, Martha abandoned Pratt in early 1849 and moved to California. Why wasn't she on the list? I don't know why they're doing these ones separately. Okay, Keziah Downs, 1812 to 1876, sorry, I can't read. Married Pratt on December 27th, 1853. They did not have any children. She lived in the same house as 5 of Pratt's other wives and helped them in raising their children. Eleanor Jane McComb, 1817 to 1874, married Pratt on November 14th, 1855. Pratt's constant missions left him little time with his family. After he started practicing plural marriage, the longest period of time he had with his family were the 18 months following his return from a mission to Chile. Okay? According to Terry L. Givens and Matthew J. Groh, Pratt's highest happiness was to be surrounded by a teeming domestic world of multiple wives and offspring. Okay. They noted he also had an antisocial bent. Okay, that's not a very nice way of saying that he's introverted. But somebody who's introverted, he went on a lot of missions. One of Pratt's grandsons, William King Driggs, was the father of the King sisters. I don't know who that is. Mitt Romney, the Massachusetts governor, 2003 to 2007, and the 2012 Republican nominee for the U.S. presidency, is one of Pratt's great-great-grandsons. Yeah, they mentioned that. One of Pratt's great-great-great-grandsons is John Huntsman, the former Utah governor and ambassador to China, and an unsuccessful candidate for the 2012 Republican presidential nomination. Outside of politics, he was the great-great-grandfather of animator Don Bluth, as well as his brother Toby Bluth. Really? I didn't know they were members of the church. Huh. I'm slightly speechless. That's interesting. Huh. Memorials. Pratt explored, surveyed, and built the first public road in Parley's Canyon, Salt Lake City, which is named in his honor. His escape from the Columbia jail on July 4th, 1839 has been commemorated in Columbia, Missouri with a Freedom Run each Independence Day since 1983. That's in his honor? Interesting. Huh. Alright. Publications. A Voice of Warning, Mormonism Unveiled, Zion's Watchman Unmasked, and its editor. And Mr. L.R. Sutherland, Exposed, Truth Vindicated, The Devil Mad, and Priestcraft in Danger. Okay, interesting. The Millennium and Other Poems, 1840. Late Persecutions of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with a sketch of their rise, progress, and doctrine, 1840. A Dialogue Between Joseph Smith and the Devil, 1844. Key to the Science of Theology, 1855, and then there's two different versions of it. I'm sure that they're identical. The Autobiography of Parley P. Pratt, 1874, and then the second version was the 1888 edition. Okay. See also LDS Fiction, Latter-day Saint Martyrs, Pratt Family, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Arkansas, The Morning Breaks, The Shadows Flee. Oh, is that his? It probably is. All right, I would like to know what... Oh, there's more references at the bottom if anybody's interested. I'm not going to read them all out. There's a lot. All right. I would like to know what songs that he wrote. Here we go. Okay. So, we have The Morning Breaks, Truth Eternal. I didn't know that was his. An Angel from on High, Come, O Thou King of Kings. Father in Heaven, We Do Believe. Jesus Once of Humble Birth. Behold Thy Sons and Daughters, Lord. And then the men's chorus version of An Angel from on High and Come, O Thou King of Kings. Okay, so that's what I wanted to know. The Morning Breaks. I think we all know that one. The morning breaks, the shadows flee. Truth Eternal. I don't think we sing, at least I don't sing that very often. Maybe you do. Truth eternal, truth divine. Yeah, that one. Not super common. An Angel from on High. An angel from on high, the long, long silence broke. And then Come, O Thou King of Kings. Come, O Thou King of Kings. Yeah. Father in Heaven, We Do Believe. Father in heaven, we do believe the promise thou hast made. Yeah, that one. And then Jesus Once of Humble Birth. Jesus once of humble birth. Yeah, that one. And then this one I'm not at all familiar with. Behold Thy Sons and Daughters, Lord. Behold Thy Sons and Daughters, Lord. Okay, I don't know this song, so I don't want to butcher it any more than that, but that's probably close, just from a little bit of sight reading. But no, I don't actually know that song. That's the only one I didn't know. So I am glad that I knew all of, like 6 of the 7. So, I mean, that's kind of fun. Anyway, I'm sure that there's some people here who know it. Let me know if I butchered the last one, but I think I got the other ones right. Anyways, that was really, really interesting, and that was a very, very detailed about his death. I found that very fascinating. Oh, I did want to check one more thing. If Hector McLean was ever convicted. Okay, it doesn't say what happened to him. I don't know what happened to him. Yeah, so I don't know. I was hoping to find out more information about his killer. Like Hector McLean being his murderer. Like, everybody knew it. They talked openly about who did it. And yet, I can't find out if he was ever convicted. It sounds like he wasn't. It sounds like he didn't even go up on charges, which is absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion, if he didn't. I don't know if that's true, but if anybody knows more information about that, please put it in the comments below, because I'm actually really interested in that. And it really bothers me that he never found justice. Yeah, that's very upsetting. Anyways, either way, I learned a lot today. A lot of details, and I hope that you did too. I mean, I knew some of them. I knew many of them, and I knew probably half. And then the other 50% of details that came out were so interesting. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Anyway, if you did, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.